They say family is everything. They say blood is thicker than water. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes, the people who share your blood are the ones who'll drain you dry. My nephew looked me in the eyes, called me Aunt B, with that warm smile, and promised to protect my future. 6 months later, I discovered he'd been systematically emptying my life savings. Every dollar I'd worked 30 years to earn. I was 73 years old, and the boy I'd helped raise was betting I was too old, too trusting, too weak to fight back. He was wrong. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. The Florida sun was relentless that 4th of July, but I didn't mind. I stood in Ryan and Lila's backyard, paper plate in hand, watching the younger relatives splash in the pool. The smell of grilled burgers mixed with chlorine and sunscreen. It was a perfect day, or so I thought. Aunt Bea! Ryan's voice cut through the chatter. He was walking toward me with that confident stride, the one he'd developed after business school. My nephew had grown into a handsome man, tall, well-dressed, with his father's strong jaw and his mother's green eyes. Come sit in the shade with me. I want to talk to you about something important. I followed him to a corner of the patio where 2 cushioned chairs sat beneath a pergola. Lila waved from across the yard, her perfectly manicured hand catching the light. She was showing off her new tennis bracelet to a cluster of women, her laugh sharp and bright. How are you doing, really? Ryan asked, leaning forward with concern etched on his face. I worry about you in that condo all alone. I'm fine, sweetheart, I assured him. I have my bridge club on Tuesdays, water aerobics on Thursdays. I keep busy. He nodded slowly, then glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. Aunt B, I need to be honest with you. The market has changed dramatically in the past few years. The strategies that worked when you retired, they're outdated now. Dangerous even. My stomach tightened slightly. I'd been an accountant for 3 decades, but I'd been retired for 8 years. Maybe things had changed. What do you mean? Interest rates, cryptocurrency, AI stocks, the whole landscape is different. I've been looking at your portfolio. He paused. Mom mentioned you have about $850,000 invested, right? I felt a flicker of discomfort. My late sister-in-law, Ryan's mother, had passed 2 years ago. Had I told her those numbers? Approximately, I said carefully. That money could be working so much harder for you, Ryan continued, his voice dropping to an intimate register. Aunt B, I deal with portfolios like yours every single day. I could optimize your returns, protect you from the volatility. You'd never have to worry about running out of money. I have a financial advisor at the brokerage. Who probably hasn't called you in months, Ryan interrupted gently. Who treats you like just another account number? Aunt B, your family. I would treat your money like it was my own mother's. His eyes glistened slightly. I miss her every day. Let me honor her memory by taking care of you the way she would have wanted. The mention of his mother, my beloved sister-in-law Helen, hit me square in the chest. Helen and I had been close. We'd shared recipes, complained about our husbands, celebrated holidays together. When she died of ovarian cancer, I'd held Ryan's hand at the funeral and promised Helen I'd always be there for her son. I don't know, I said slowly. I'm pretty hands-off with my investments. I don't want to be a burden. You could never be a burden? Ryan said firmly. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Listen, I'm not talking about anything dramatic. Just let me review your statements, make some adjustments. You won't have to do anything except enjoy your retirement. I'll handle everything. Lila appeared then, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. Ryan, are you talking business at a party? She scolded playfully, but her eyes were calculating as they flicked between us. Aunt B, he really is brilliant at this. Our friends are always asking him for advice. Well, take care of you, Aunt. Ryan promised, accepting a glass and handing the other to me. His eyes gleamed with what I thought was affection. You've been alone too long. The lemonade was sweet and cold. The pool water sparkled. Children laughed. It felt like love. All right, I heard myself say. Let's talk about it. Ryan's smile widened. Perfect. I'll bring some paperwork by next week. Just a limited power of attorney so I can make trades on your behalf. Simple and safe. I nodded, feeling a warmth in my chest. It was nice to be cared for. Nice to feel like I still had family who wanted to protect me. I didn't know I'd just invited a wolf into my henhouse. The following Tuesday, Ryan appeared at my condo with a leather portfolio and that same reassuring smile. This won't take long, he promised, spreading documents across my dining room table. This just gives me authority to execute trades in your brokerage account. You'll still get all the statements, still have full access. I'm just helping to manage it more actively. I read through the power of attorney form. The language was dense, full of legal terms, but the core seemed straightforward enough. Ryan would be able to make investment decisions on my behalf. What about withdrawals? I asked. Can you take money out? Only to execute trades or pay standard management fees, he explained. Everything goes through the brokerage's compliance department. It's all regulated, Aunt B. I couldn't steal from you if I wanted to. He laughed at the absurdity of the idea. I picked up the pen. My hand hesitated for just a moment. Aunt B, Ryan said softly, I know this requires trust. But I promise you, on my mother's memory, I will treat your money with the utmost care and respect. I signed. He witnessed my signature, then folded the documents carefully into his portfolio. You're going to see some real growth, he assured me. I'm thinking we'll shift about 30% into some emerging tech stocks, rebalance the bonds, maybe explore some international opportunities. It sounded professional. It sounded smart. Thank you, Ryan, I said, walking him to the door. Your mother would be so proud of the man you've become. Something flickered across his face, guilt, regret, but it was gone so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. I'll take care of everything, he said, and he did. Just not the way I thought. The first month after signing that power of attorney, I felt lighter. Someone capable was watching over my finances. I could focus on my bridge games, my morning walks along the beach, my book club discussions. Ryan called twice to update me. Something about rebalancing the portfolio and taking advantage of market opportunities. It all sounded reasonable. My August statement arrived on a Wednesday. For years, I'd glanced at the summary page, confirmed my balance was roughly where it should be, and filed it away. But that morning, something made me look closer. My total balance is $782,446. I blinked, certain I'd misread. I pulled out July's statement from my filing cabinet. That balance had been $849,720. I'd lost over $67,000 in 1 month. My hands started shaking. I told myself it was market volatility. There'd been talk of inflation on the news, but $67,000 in 30 days. I picked up the phone and called the brokerage's customer service line. Lighthouse Investments, this is Trevor speaking. How may I help you? Yes, this is Beatrice Thompson. Account number 4789213. I'm looking at my August statement and I'm concerned about the activity. Keys clicked on the other end. One moment, Mrs. Thompson. Okay, I'm pulling up your account now. A pause. I see you've had quite a bit of trading activity this month. 23 separate transactions. My stomach dropped. 23. Yes, ma'am. Let's see. There were several tech stock purchases, some short-term bond sales, a few international equity positions. Your authorized trader has been quite active. My nephew is the authorized trader, I said slowly. Can you tell me exactly what he bought and sold? Trevor walked me through the list. Stocks I'd never heard of. Companies with names like Quantum Leap Dynamics and Next-Gen Crypto Solutions. High-risk positions that an accountant, even a retired one, knew were completely inappropriate for a 73-year-old woman's retirement portfolio. And the fees? I asked, my voice barely steady. The commission fees and advisory charges for August total $4,300. $4,300 in 1 month. Thank you, I managed to say and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for 20 minutes staring at the statement. Then I did something that would change everything. I opened my laptop. 3 months earlier, Ryan had asked me to help him reset his email password. He'd locked himself out and needed to access an important client message. I'd walked him through the process using my computer, creating a new password, HelmM1955, his mother's name and birth year. A password I'd suggested when I knew he'd remember. Now, sitting in my quiet condo with my heart pounding, I navigated to his email provider. I typed in his address. I typed in the password. It worked. I know what you're thinking. What I did was wrong. It was an invasion of privacy. But something deep in my gut told me I needed to see the truth. And sometimes when you're fighting for your survival, you have to break a few rules. I searched for Beatrice in his emails. The first message that came up was from 2 weeks ago. From Leela to Ryan. How much longer do we have to keep up this charade? I'm tired of having dinner with that old woman. Just liquidate the assets and be done with it. Orion's response, a patience. If I move too fast, the brokerage compliance will flag it. I'm churning the account to generate commissions. Already pulled in $9,000 in fees. Once I get her balance down to around $600,000, I'll tell her the market crashed and she needs to move everything into the special investment vehicle I set up. That's when we drain it completely. Leela, she's not going to notice? Ryan, she's 73 and alone. By the time she figures it out, we'll have moved the money offshore. Who's she going to tell? Who's going to believe her over me? I'm a licensed stockbroker. She's just a senile old lady. I read those words 3 times, 4 times 5. Senile old lady. The nephew I'd held as a baby, the boy I'd given birthday money to every year, the young man I'd helped with his college application essays. He was systematically robbing me and betting I was too old, too stupid, too trusting to fight back. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the mouse. I kept reading. More emails. Plans to create a fake investment fund. Wire transfer instructions to an account in the Cayman Islands. A message to Leela about the new Mercedes she wanted. Once we liquidate Aunt B's portfolio, you can get the AMG. She's funding our whole lifestyle upgrade. There was even a spreadsheet attached to one email, a detailed projection of how they'd extract my money over 6 months, leaving me with just enough to avoid immediate suspicion but not enough to maintain my lifestyle. The final note at the bottom read, worst case, she ends up in Medicaid facility. Best case, she dies before she realizes how broke she is. I closed the laptop. I walked to my bathroom. I vomited. Then I washed my face, looked at myself in the mirror, and made a decision. They thought I was weak. They thought I was helpless. They thought age had made me vulnerable. They were about to learn that the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew I could trust. Martha, it's Beatrice. I need your help. Can you come over? It's urgent. My cousin arrived 30 minutes later, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Martha Gonzalez had been a paralegal for 40 years before retiring. If anyone would know what to do, it was her. I showed her everything. The state emails. The spreadsheet. Martha's face went from concerned to horrified to absolutely furious. That son of a, she caught herself. Beatrice, this is elder financial abuse. This is securities fraud. This is, she trailed off, reading the emails again. This is prosecutable. What do I do? I asked. My voice sounded small. Martha set down the papers and looked at me with fierce determination. You fight, but you fight smart. First, we document everything. We're going to save these emails, print them, back them up. Then we're going to call a forensic accountant I know, David Chen. He specializes in financial fraud investigation. And then my amour, we're going to destroy them. For the first time since opening that statement, I smiled. One thing, Martha said, her voice dropping. Once we start this, there's no going back. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be expensive. Ryan will deny everything. Leela will play victim. Your family, what's left of it, might take sides. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my husband, dead 5 years now. I thought about Helen, my sister-in-law, who'd trusted me to watch over her son. I thought about every hour I'd worked, every dollar I'd saved, every sacrifice I'd made to build a secure retirement. I'm prepared, I said. I didn't survive 73 years to roll over and die now. Martha squeezed my hand. That's my girl. Now let's get to work. We spent the next 3 hours documenting everything. Martha showed me how to export Ryan's emails to a flash drive. We photographed every page of every statement. We created a timeline of events, from the barbecue conversation to today. At 7 o'clock, Martha called David Chen. David, it's Martha Gonzalez. I have a client who needs your help. Elder financial abuse, securities fraud, probably wire fraud. Can you meet with us tomorrow? She listened, then looked at me. He can see us at 10 a.m. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying Ryan's words in my mind. Senile old lady. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that spreadsheet. My life savings reduced to numbers in their scheme. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose, clarity, rage. They'd made a mistake. They'd underestimated me. And I was going to make sure they regretted it. David Chen's office was in a modest building in downtown Boca Raton, sandwiched between a dentist's office and a tax preparation service. Martha and I arrived 15 minutes early, and I used the time to steady my nerves. I'd brought everything, the statements, the flash drive with Ryan's emails, my copy of the power of attorney. David was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s with black-rimmed glasses and an easy smile that put me at ease immediately. His handshake was firm, his demeanor professional but warm. Mrs. Thompson, Martha has told me a bit about your situation. Why don't you start from the beginning? I did. I told him about the barbecue, about Ryan's promises, about the power of attorney. I told him about discovering the losses and finding the emails. My voice cracked when I repeated what Ryan had written about me being senile. David listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to be direct with you. What your nephew has done is serious criminal behavior. Securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, elder financial abuse under Florida Statute 825.103, and potentially wire fraud if he's moved money across state lines or internationally. This isn't just a civil matter. This could result in criminal prosecution. Good, I said firmly. He smiled slightly. I like your spirit. But before we proceed, you need to understand what's ahead. This process will take months, possibly over a year. It will be expensive. My retainer is $15,000, and the total cost could reach $50,000 or more depending on how aggressively Ryan fights back. You'll need an attorney as well, and it will be emotionally draining. I understand, I said. What are my chances of recovering my money? David pulled out the statements and began reviewing them. Let's look at what we can prove. You have the power of attorney document showing what authority you actually granted him. You have brokerage statements showing the trading activity, and you have these emails. He looked up at me. How did you obtain these emails, Mrs. Thompson? Martha and I exchanged glances. I accessed his email account, I admitted. He'd asked me to help him reset his password months ago, and I remembered what it was. David nodded slowly. That's going to be a problem. Evidence obtained through unauthorized access might not be admissible in court. A good defense attorney will argue that you violated the Stored Communications Act. However, he held up a hand as my face fell. However, we can use the information in these emails as a roadmap. We know what to look for now. We can subpoena his bank records, request wire transfer documentation, and get the brokerage's internal records of every trade he made. The emails tell us the story. The official documents will prove it. So they're still useful? I asked. Absolutely. They just can't be our primary evidence. Think of them as a treasure map. Now we know where to dig. He made more notes. Here's what I propose. First, we conduct a complete forensic analysis of your accounts. I'll trace every transaction, every fee, every commission. Second, we document the pattern of trading, excessive turnover, inappropriate risk for your age and risk tolerance self-dealing. Third, we identify where the money went. These emails mention offshore accounts and wire transfers. Those leave trails. How long will this take? Martha asked. The initial analysis. 2 to 3 weeks. Building the complete case. 2 to 3 months. He looked at me seriously. Mrs. Thompson, I need to ask you something important. Have you confronted Ryan about any of this? No, I said. I discovered it 3 days ago. The only people who know are Martha and now you. Good, don't contact him. Don't let on that you know anything. If he suspects you're investigating, he'll start covering his tracks. Deleting records, moving money, manufacturing explanations. We need him to feel safe. The thought of pretending everything was normal made my skin crawl. You want me to just act like nothing's wrong? For now, yes. If he calls, be pleasant. If he wants to visit, let him. The more comfortable he is, the sloppier he'll be. David leaned forward. Mrs. Thompson, I know this is difficult, but you're going to win this. The evidence is overwhelming. We just need to build the case properly. I signed the retainer agreement and wrote a check for $15,000. It hurt to part with that money, knowing how much Ryan had already taken, but Martha reminded me it was an investment in justice. Over the next 2 weeks, David worked methodically. He requested 5 years of bank statements from me. He drafted subpoenas for the brokerage's records. He analyzed every trade Ryan had made, building spreadsheets that showed the pattern of churning, buying and selling stocks rapidly to generate commissions rather than grow my portfolio. Meanwhile, I played my role. When Ryan called to check in on me, I kept my voice light and cheerful. How are your investments looking, Aunt Bay? He asked during one call, and I could hear the smugness in his voice. Oh, I don't pay much attention to the day-to-day fluctuations, I said sweetly. I trust you're handling everything, absolutely. In fact, I've been thinking we should meet next week. There's a new investment opportunity I want to discuss with you. Very exclusive, very high yield. The special investment vehicle. The trap he planned to use to drain the rest of my money. That sounds wonderful, dear. I'll make us lunch. And after I hung up, I immediately called David. He wants to meet next week. He mentioned a new investment opportunity. Perfect, David said. When he pitches it to you, I want you to wear a wire, like in the movies. Exactly like in the movies. It's legal in Florida. We're a 2-party consent state. But if he's attempting fraud, we have an exception for documenting criminal activity. Plus, I want you to get him talking, ask questions. Get him to explain the investment. The more details he gives you, the more rope he provides to hang himself. 3 days later, I met with David and a technical specialist who fitted me with a small recording device. It was surprisingly tiny, no bigger than a lipstick tube clipped inside my cardigan. Just act natural, the specialist instructed. The microphone is sensitive. It'll pick up everything. The night before Ryan's visit, I couldn't sleep. I rehearsed questions in my mind, imagining the conversation. Part of me still couldn't believe I was doing this. Treating my own nephew like a criminal, setting a trap, recording him secretly. But then I'd remember his words. Senile old lady, she's funding our whole lifestyle upgrade. Best case, she dies before she realizes how broke she is. And my resolve would harden. Ryan arrived at noon on Tuesday, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing an expensive suit I suspected my money had purchased. He kissed my cheek, before settling into my dining room chair. Aunt B, you're going to love this, he began, pulling out a glossy brochure. It's called the Platinum Horizon Fund. Very exclusive, invitation only. Minimum investment of $500,000. I felt the recording device against my ribs. That's quite a lot of money. It is, but the returns are exceptional. 20 to 25% annually, guaranteed. Any accountant knows that guaranteed high returns are a red flag. How can they guarantee that? I asked innocently. Ryan launched into an explanation involving proprietary algorithms and hedge fund strategies and offshore tax advantages. It was impressive sounding nonsense, the kind of pitch designed to confuse rather than inform. The best part, he continued, is that we'd move your entire portfolio into this fund. No more worrying about market volatility. Just steady, predictable growth. My entire portfolio, I repeated. I'll 800,000. Well, it's down to about 760 now after the recent trades, but yes, we'd consolidate everything. He smiled reassuringly. I'd be the fund manager for your specific allocation. You'd never have to worry about a thing. And how would I access the money if I needed it? There's a 90-day withdrawal notice period, but that's standard for high-yield investments. Aunt B, trust me on this. This is the opportunity I've been waiting for. This will set you up for life. Set him up for life, he meant. I'll need to think about it, I said carefully. Ryan's smile tightened slightly. Of course, but I need an answer by Friday. These slots fill up fast. After he left, I sat in my chair for a long moment, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. Then I removed the recording device and called David. I got it. I said every word. Excellent. Mrs. Thompson, we're almost ready. I've completed the forensic analysis. I have the brokerage records. And now we have him on tape pitching a fraudulent investment. It's time to bring in an attorney and decide our next move. What are my options? I asked. 3 paths. First, criminal complaint to the state attorney and the SEC. That's justice, but it's slow, and there's no guarantee you'll recover your money. Second, civil lawsuit for damages. That's faster, and you can recover losses plus penalties. Third, both simultaneously. That's the nuclear option. You hit him from every direction. I didn't hesitate. Both. I want him to feel the full weight of what he's done. David was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Thompson, that's going to be war. Good, I said. Because I didn't start this fight. But I'm damn well going to finish it. The attorney David recommended was named Patricia Vasquez, a fierce woman in her late 50s who specialized in elder law and financial exploitation cases. She had silver-streaked hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for being ruthless in court. I've reviewed everything David sent me, Patricia said at our first meeting. Mrs. Thompson, you have one of the strongest cases I've seen in 20 years of practice. The paper trail is devastating. The recorded conversation seals it. But before we file anything, I need to ask you a question. What's that? Do you want to give Ryan a chance to settle this quietly, or do you want to make an example of him? I thought about that for a long moment. Part of me, the part that remembered bouncing him on my knee when he was 5, wanted to offer him a way out, a chance to return the money, apologize, and disappear from my life. But then I thought about Leela's email. Just liquidate the assets and be done with it. I thought about their casual cruelty, their assumption that I was too senile to notice or too weak to fight back. I want justice, I said quietly. For me, and for every other elderly person who's been victimized this way and didn't have the resources to fight back. Patricia smiled grimly. Then we're going to give them a war they'll never forget. She drafted a comprehensive civil complaint: securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, elder financial abuse, constructive fraud, and unjust enrichment. The damages we requested totaled $1.8 million, 3 times my losses plus punitive damages and attorney fees. Simultaneously, she helped me file complaints with the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Florida Department of Elder Affairs. Each complaint included the forensic analysis, the brokerage records, and carefully worded references to evidence we'd discovered without directly mentioning the emails. Once we file, everything happens fast, Patricia warned. Ryan will be served with papers. His employer will be notified. The SEC will launch an investigation. He'll know immediately that you know everything. Are you prepared for his reaction?
Yes,
I said, though my hands were trembling. Good, because here's what's going to happen. First, he'll deny everything. Then he'll claim you're confused. Then he'll get angry. Then he'll try to negotiate. Stay strong through all of it. We filed on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, a process server had delivered the lawsuit to Ryan's office. By Monday evening, my phone was ringing. I let it go to voicemail. Aunt B, it's Ryan. I don't understand. Someone served me with legal papers at work. They're saying I defrauded you. This is insane. Please call me. We can work this out. This is all a misunderstanding. The second message came an hour later, his tone sharper. Aunt B, this isn't funny. You're gonna ruin my career over some accounting error. I'm trying to help you, and this is how you repay me. Call me back immediately. The third message arrived at 10 p.m. You ungrateful. He caught himself. Do you have any idea what you've done? The SEC is going to investigate me. My firm put me on administrative leave. All because you're too senile to understand how investment management works. I'm going to fight this, and when I win, you're going to look like a fool. I saved every message. Tuesday morning, Leela called. Her voice was sugary sweet, dripping with fake concern. Aunt Beatrice, it's Leela. I'm so worried about you. Ryan told me about this terrible misunderstanding. I think someone has been giving you bad advice. Maybe you're feeling confused. These things happen at your age. Why don't I come over and we can talk about this like family? I didn't return her call either. Wednesday, Patricia called me. Ryan's attorney reached out. He wants to meet. He's claiming this is all a mistake, that he can explain everything, that you're being manipulated by outside parties. Do you want to hear him out? Yes, I said. But I want to do it on my terms. Tell him I'll meet with him, but it has to be in your office, with you and David present, and everything will be recorded. The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. I spent Thursday preparing. Martha came over and helped me organize my thoughts, my evidence, and my emotions. You don't owe him anything, she reminded me. Not an explanation, not forgiveness, not a second chance. You're doing this to hear what lies he'll try to sell. Stay strong. A Friday arrived. I dressed carefully. A simple blouse and slacks, my pearl earrings, minimal makeup. I wanted to look competent, alert, and completely in control. Patricia's conference room had a long wooden table, chairs on either side, and windows overlooking the parking lot. David was already there, his laptop open, files stacked neatly in front of him. Patricia sat at the head of the table, a yellow legal pad before her. I took my seat. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. At 2 p.m. Ryan arrived with his attorney, a slick-looking man in his 40s named Gerald Hoffman. Ryan looked terrible, his face was pale, his suit rumpled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. For a split second, I felt a pang of sympathy. Then he opened his mouth. Aunt B, thank God. Listen, this whole thing is a massive misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Patricia held up a hand. Mr. Mitchell, let's establish the ground rules. This is a settlement conference. Everything said here is confidential and cannot be used in court. However, we are recording this meeting for our records. You may speak freely, but be advised that anything you say will be documented. Gerald shifted uncomfortably. We're here in good faith to resolve this matter quickly and quietly. Then let's begin. Patricia said coolly. Mr. Mitchell, my client has alleged that you engaged in unauthorized trading, churned her account to generate excessive commissions, and attempted to defraud her through a fake investment scheme. Do you deny these allegations? Ryan looked at me, his eyes pleading. Aunt B, I was trying to help you. Yes, I made some trades. But that's what you authorized me to do. The power of attorney. The power of attorney, David interrupted, authorized you to make investment decisions in Mrs. Thompson's best interest. It did not authorize you to churn her account, generate excessive commissions, or pitch fraudulent investment vehicles. Let me ask you this, Mr. Mitchell. Can you explain why you executed 23 trades in August alone when Mrs. Thompson's previous advisor made an average of 4 trades per year? Ryan's jaw tightened. Market conditions required active management. Can you explain why those trades resulted in $4,300 in fees in a single month? That's standard. Can you explain? David continued relentlessly, why you purchased high-risk tech stocks and cryptocurrency-related securities for a 73-year-old retired accountant. I was diversifying. Can you explain the Platinum Horizon Fund? Ryan went pale. That was a legitimate investment opportunity. David opened his laptop and turned it so everyone could see the screen. We contacted the supposed fund manager. No such fund exists. The website you showed Mrs. Thompson was registered 2 weeks before your pitch. The address listed is a UPS store in Delaware. Mr. Mitchell, you were attempting to move Mrs. Thompson's entire portfolio into a fake fund that you controlled. The room went silent. Gerald cleared his throat. My client may have been overly optimistic about certain investment opportunities, but there was no criminal intent. No criminal intent. Patricia's voice was ice. Your client wrote in an email, and yes, we have the email, that he planned to liquidate Mrs. Thompson's assets and move the money offshore before she could realize she'd been defrauded. He referred to her as a senile old lady who would end up in a Medicaid facility. His wife wrote that they should just liquidate the assets and be done with it. That sounds like intent to me. Ryan's face crumbled. Aunt B, please. I was frustrated, I was stressed, I wrote some stupid things I didn't mean. You meant every word, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken directly to him since the meeting began. You looked at my life savings, everything I worked 30 years to earn, and you saw your ticket to a Mercedes and country club memberships. You didn't see your aunt. You didn't see family. That's not. I held you when you were a baby, Ryan. I helped you with your homework. I was there at your college graduation. I loved you. And you repaid that love by trying to steal everything I have and betting I'd be too old and stupid to notice. The tears were streaming down his face now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I got in over my head with debt and I panicked and I got Aunt B. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't good enough. I said, my voice didn't waver. Sorry doesn't give me back the months I lost sleep. Sorry doesn't give me back my sense of security. Sorry doesn't protect the next elderly person you'd have victimized if I hadn't caught you. Patricia leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. Mrs. Thompson is willing to consider a settlement. But it's going to cost you everything. Full restitution of losses, that's $67,000. Punitive damages of $300,000. All attorney fees and forensic accounting costs, approximately $80,000. And a written confession detailing exactly what you did, which will be provided to FamilyDrama, the SEC, and the state attorney's office. Gerald's eyes widened. That's $450,000. My client doesn't have that kind of money. Then he'll need to find it. Patricia said flatly. Sell the house. Liquidate the retirement accounts. Get a loan, I don't care. But if we don't have a signed settlement agreement and a payment plan within 10 days, we proceed to trial. And trust me, Mr. Hoffman, we will win. The evidence is overwhelming. Your client will be permanently barred from the securities industry. He'll face criminal prosecution, and he'll owe even more in damages. Ryan looked at Gerald desperately. Gerald sighed heavily. Can we have a moment alone with my client? Patricia nodded, and she David, and I stepped outside. In the hallway my legs suddenly felt weak. Martha, who'd been waiting in the lobby, rushed over. How did it go? I think we broke him, I said quietly. We waited 20 minutes. Finally, Gerald emerged. We need to discuss terms with Mrs. Thompson's team. May we have a few more minutes? They negotiated for another hour. Finally, they reached an agreement. Ryan would pay $400,000 over 3 years, starting with $100,000 within 30 days. He would provide a full written confession. He would cooperate with any regulatory investigations. And he would have no further contact with me ever. I signed the settlement agreement at 6 p.m. on Friday evening. As Ryan was leaving, he paused at the door and looked back at me. I really am sorry, Aunt B. I met his eyes. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. The weekend after the settlement conference was the longest of my life. I kept replaying Ryan's face, the tears, the desperate apologies. Part of me, a very small, very foolish part, wondered if I'd been too harsh. Then I'd remember the emails, the spreadsheet, the casual cruelty of their planning. And I'd remind myself that what Ryan regretted wasn't hurting me. He regretted getting caught. Martha stayed with me that Saturday night. We ordered Chinese food and watched old movies, but neither of us could really focus. My phone kept buzzing with blocked numbers. I assumed it was Leela or other members of Ryan's family, trying to reach me to plead his case or call me heartless. I didn't answer. Sunday morning, Patricia called. Mrs. Thompson, I wanted to give you a heads up. Ryan's attorney contacted me. They're going to try to get a loan to make the first payment by the deadline. But there's something else you should know. What's that? Ryan's firm terminated him on Friday, and Leela filed for divorce on Saturday morning. I absorbed this information silently. That was fast. Money makes people move fast. Patricia said drily. When she realized he'd be spending the next 3 years paying you back, instead of funding her lifestyle, she bailed. The divorce filing claims irreconcilable differences, but I suspect the real difference is his bank account balance. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt hollow. This was justice, yes, but it was also the complete destruction of what remained of my family connections. Mrs. Thompson, are you still there? I said. Thank you for letting me know. On Monday, David called with an update on the regulatory investigations. FamilyDrama has opened a formal inquiry. The SEC is reviewing the case, and the state attorney's office is considering criminal charges for elder exploitation. Even with the settlement, Ryan's going to face professional consequences that will follow him for the rest of his life. Good, I said, and meant it. The first payment arrived on schedule, a cashier's check for $100,000 delivered via certified mail. I stared at it for a long time before depositing it. It was a start, but it wasn't enough. The money couldn't buy back my peace of mind. It couldn't restore my trust. It couldn't undo the months of stress and fear. But it was something. Over the next few weeks, word spread through my small social circle. At Bridge Club, my friend Dorothy pulled me aside. Beatrice, I heard about what happened with Ryan. I'm so sorry. If you need anything, thank you, I said quietly. I'm managing. But the looks I got from some of the other women told me that not everyone saw it my way. There were whispers. She sued her own nephew. Family should handle things privately. She must have misunderstood something. One woman, Helen's old friend Barbara, actually approached me in the grocery store parking lot. Beatrice, how could you do that to Helen's boy? She'd be devastated to see you destroying her son's life over money. Something inside me snapped. Barbara? Helen's boy tried to bankrupt me and leave me destitute. He called me a senile old lady. He planned to put me in a Medicaid facility while he spent my money on luxury cars. Don't you dare tell me what Helen would think. Barbara backed away, her face flushed. But she left me alone after that. The incident rattled me more than I wanted to admit. That evening, I called Martha, crying. Am I the villain here? Did I do the wrong thing? Absolutely not. Martha said fiercely. Listen to me, Beatrice. What Ryan did was criminal. You had every right to protect yourself. Anyone who thinks you should have stayed silent is either naive or complicit in a culture that tells women, especially older women, to stay quiet and accept abuse. You did the brave thing, the right thing. It doesn't feel brave. It feels lonely, I know, my amor. But you're not alone, you have me, and you're going to come through this stronger than ever. I promise you that. 6 weeks after the settlement, something unexpected happened. I received a letter from a woman named Carol Jennings. She'd read about my case in a local news article. Apparently, Patricia had given a brief interview to a reporter covering elder financial abuse. The letter read, "Dear Mrs. Thompson, I read about your experience with your nephew, and I had to write to you. 3 years ago, my son-in-law convinced me to give him power of attorney over my finances. Within a year, he drained my accounts of nearly $200,000. I was too ashamed to tell anyone. Too afraid my daughter would hate me for accusing her husband. By the time I realized what had happened, I'd lost everything. I ended up moving into senior housing on Social Security alone. I never fought back because I thought I couldn't win. I thought no one would believe me. I thought I was too old to matter. Your story gave me hope. Not for myself. It's too late for me now. But for other women like us. Thank you for being brave enough to fight. Thank you for showing the world that we're not invisible. With gratitude, Carol Jennings." I read that letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Then I called Patricia. I want to do something. Something bigger than just my case. What did you have it in mind? I want to speak publicly about this. I want to help other victims. I want to make sure no one else has to suffer in silence the way Carol did. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Thompson, that's a beautiful impulse. But you should know that going public means giving up your privacy. People will know your name, your story, your business. Are you ready for that? I thought about Carol, living on Social Security alone, too ashamed to fight back. I thought about all the other Carols out there being victimized by people they trusted. I'm ready, I said. Patricia connected me with the local chapter of the Elder Justice Coalition, a nonprofit that advocated for seniors and provided resources to abuse victims. Within 2 weeks, I was giving my first public talk at a community center in West Palm Beach. 30 people attended. I stood at the podium, my hands shaking slightly, and told my story. I talked about the warning signs I'd missed, the red flags I'd ignored, the moment I'd discovered the truth, and the decision to fight back. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then a woman in her 80s stood up and started clapping. Others joined her. Soon the whole room was on their feet, applauding. Afterward, at least a dozen people approached me. Some wanted to share their own stories, some wanted advice. One woman, tears in her eyes, said, "My grandson has been pressuring me to add him to my bank account. I was going to do it next week. After hearing you, I'm not going to. Thank you for saving me." That night, I went home and slept better than I had in months. Over the next 3 months, I spoke at 4 more events. I wrote an op-ed for the local newspaper about financial red flags for seniors. I volunteered with the Elder Justice Coalition, helping them develop educational materials. And slowly, gradually, I began to rebuild my life. The second payment from Ryan arrived on schedule. Then the third. Each check felt like a small victory, a piece of my security being returned. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was the sense of purpose I'd discovered. The knowledge that my pain could prevent someone else's suffering. The realization that at 73 years old, I was just beginning a new chapter of my life. One where I wasn't a victim, but a survivor and an advocate. Martha noticed the change in me. "You're different," she observed one afternoon over coffee. "Lighter. I think I finally stopped being angry," I said. "I'm still hurt, I probably always will be. But the anger was eating me alive. Now I'm channeling it into something productive." "Helen would be proud of you," Martha said softly. I thought about my sister-in-law, gone now for 7 years. I hope so. I think she'd understand why I had to do what I did. And I think she'd be disappointed in Ryan. But she'd still love him, just like I do, in a complicated way. "Do you ever think about reaching out to him?" "No," I said firmly. "That door is closed. He made his choices. I made mine. We both have to live with them." But late at night, sometimes I'd wonder what Ryan was doing. If he'd found new work. If he understood why I'd fought back. If he ever thought about me with anything other than resentment. I'd never know. And that was okay. Some doors, once closed, need to stay closed. The final settlement payment arrived on a Tuesday morning in April, exactly 3 years after I'd signed the agreement. I held the cashier's check in my hands, $75,000, the last installment, and felt a strange mix of relief and melancholy. It was over. The legal battle, the monthly reminders, the connection to Ryan through these financial transactions, all of it was finally complete. I deposited the check that afternoon. My account balance now showed $247,892. Between the settlement payments, the continued growth of my remaining investments under a new, thoroughly vetted advisor, and 3 years of careful budgeting, I'd not only recovered my losses, but exceeded where I'd been before Ryan's betrayal. But the real wealth I'd accumulated couldn't be measured in dollars. That evening, I attended a planning meeting for the Elder Justice Coalition's annual fundraising gala. I'd become a board member 2 years earlier, and the organization had grown significantly. We now had a hotline for financial abuse victims, a legal aid fund, and educational programs in senior centers across 3 counties. "Beatrice, we were hoping you'd be willing to be our keynote speaker this year," said Margaret Chen, our executive director. "Your story is so powerful, and it's been 3 years since you first went public. I think people would love to hear about your journey, not just the fraud but what came after." I hesitated. Over the past 3 years I'd told my story dozens of times, but always focusing on the warning signs and the legal process. I'd kept the emotional aftermath private, sharing it only with Martha and my therapist. "What would you want me to talk about?" I asked. "Recovery, resilience, how you rebuilt your life after the betrayal. So many victims get stuck in the trauma." "You didn't." "That's inspiring." I agreed to think about it. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out photo albums from storage and looked through pictures of Ryan as a child. There he was at age 5, missing his front teeth, holding a birthday cake I'd baked for him. At 10, graduating from elementary school, grinning widely. At 18, college-bound, standing between his mother and me. Looking at those photos didn't hurt the way I'd expected. Instead, I felt a quiet sadness for the boy he'd been and the man he'd become. Whatever potential he'd had, whatever goodness had existed in him, had been corrupted by greed and desperation. I closed the albums and returned them to storage. Those memories were part of my history, but they didn't define my present. The next Monday, I called Margaret. "I'll give the keynote, but I want to talk about something specific. The myth that family should always be forgiven, and why that belief keeps victims trapped." "That's perfect," Margaret said. I spent 2 weeks crafting my speech. I wrote about how cultural expectations pressure older adults to stay silent about abuse from family members. About how shame and guilt become weapons abusers use to maintain control. About how choosing yourself over family loyalty isn't selfish, it's survival. The gala was held at a hotel ballroom in downtown Boca Raton. 300 people attended, including local politicians, attorneys, social workers, and seniors advocates. I wore a navy dress and the pearl necklace my late husband had given me for our 30th anniversary. Martha sat in the front row, beaming with pride. When my turn came, I walked to the podium. The room quieted. "Good evening," I began. "My name is Beatrice Thompson, and I'm 76 years old. 6 years ago, my nephew, a man I'd helped raise, systematically stole from me, planning to leave me destitute and homeless. When I discovered what he'd done and fought back, some people called me vindictive. They said family should forgive. They said I was destroying a young man's life over money. They said I should have handled it privately." I paused, looking out at the audience. "I'm here tonight to tell you that those people were wrong. And their wrongness is dangerous." Over the next 20 minutes, I shared my complete story. Not just the fraud, but the aftermath, the loneliness, the judgment, the moment I'd received Carol Jennings's letter and decided my pain could have purpose, the hundreds of people I'd helped through speaking engagements and volunteer work, the friendships I'd built with other survivors. "Here's what I've learned," I said, nearing the end. "Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect, by care, by genuine love. When someone violates that, whether they're your nephew, your child, your sibling, you have not only the right but the responsibility to protect yourself. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, no matter how closely related you are." I took a breath. To every older adult listening, your life has value. Your security matters. Your peace of mind is not negotiable. If someone is abusing you, financially, emotionally, physically, you deserve help, you deserve justice, and you deserve to live your remaining years in safety and dignity. The applause was thunderous. People stood, some were crying. Afterward, at least 50 people approached me. Some shared their stories, some thanked me. One elderly man, probably in his 80s, gripped my hand and said, "My daughter has been stealing from me for 2 years. I didn't know what to do. After hearing you, I'm going to call the helpline tomorrow. Thank you for giving me permission to protect myself." That night, lying in bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: complete peace. Not happiness, that would come and go, but a deep, settled peace that came from knowing I'd turned my worst experience into something meaningful. The next morning, I made a decision. I'd been living carefully for 6 years, focused on security and caution. It was time to live differently. I called my travel agent. "I want to plan a trip, something significant, maybe 2 months in Europe." "How wonderful. Where were you thinking?" "Everywhere," I said, smiling. "I want to see everything I've been putting off." Over the next week, we planned an 8-week journey: London, Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Vienna, Prague. Museums and cafes and walking tours. I'd go alone, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I wanted to prove to myself that at 76, I was still capable of adventure. Martha thought I was crazy. 2 months. Alone. What if something happens? Then something happens. I said. Martha, I've spent the last 6 years fighting and recovering and advocating. It's been meaningful, but it's also been exhausting. I need to remember what it feels like to just live, to see beautiful things and eat good food and not think about fraud or lawsuits or testimony. She hugged me tightly. Then go, send me postcards. Come back with stories. I left in September. The first week in London, I visited the British Museum and saw the Rosetta Stone. I stood in front of it for 20 minutes, marveling at how something so ancient could still teach us to understand what once seemed incomprehensible. In Paris, I ate croissants in sidewalk cafes and visited the Musée d'Orsay. In Rome, I threw a coin in the Trevi fountain, a wish for continued strength and joy. In Barcelona, I stood in the Sagrada Familia and wept at the beauty of light streaming through stained glass. Every city taught me something. Every museum, every conversation with strangers, every moment of independence reminded me that my life wasn't over. It wasn't even close to over. I met other travelers, some young, some my age, some older. In Vienna, I befriended a woman named Ingrid, a 78-year-old German widow traveling alone for the first time since her husband's death. We spent 3 days exploring together, sharing stories over schnitzel and coffee. You seem so fearless, Ingrid observed. I'm terrified half the time. I'm terrified too, I admitted. But I've learned that fear isn't a reason to stop living. It's a sign that you're doing something worth doing. By the time I returned home in November, I felt transformed. Not healed. Some wounds never fully heal, but stronger. More certain of who I was and what I wanted from the years I had left. Martha picked me up from the airport. You look different, she said, studying my face. I feel different, I said. I feel like myself again. Maybe even a better version than before. That evening, unpacking my suitcase, I found the journal I'd kept during my travels. The last entry read, "Today I realized something important. Ryan didn't just try to steal my money. He tried to steal my sense of self, my independence, my power. But he failed. I fought back, and in fighting, I discovered strengths I didn't know I had. I discovered a purpose beyond my own comfort. I discovered that the final chapters of life can be the richest if you're brave enough to write them yourself. I am 76 years old. I am a survivor, an advocate, a traveler, a friend. I am not a victim. I am not defined by what was done to me. I am defined by what I chose to do in response. And I choose joy. I choose adventure. I choose to live every remaining day as fully and authentically as possible. This is my story, and it's far from over." 5 years after the settlement, I received an unexpected letter. The return address was from a correctional facility in North Carolina. My hands trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was Ryan's. "Dear Aunt Beatrice, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to respond. But my therapist says I need to write it anyway for my own recovery. I'm writing from a minimum security facility where I'm serving 18 months for wire fraud. Unrelated to what I did to you, but similar. After you sued me, I thought I'd learned my lesson. But I was drowning in debt, and I made another terrible choice with another client's money. This time, there was no settlement option. I've had a lot of time to think here. About Mom, about you, about the man I became. The truth is, I was never the person you thought I was. Even as a kid, I was always looking for shortcuts. Always willing to bend rules if I thought I wouldn't get caught. You saw the best in me, but it was a version of me that never really existed. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing to tell you that you were right to fight back. You were right to refuse to be a victim. And you were right that some doors need to stay closed. I've heard about your advocacy work. My cellmate's grandmother attended one of your talks and called him about it. She said you helped her recognize that her son was financially abusing her. Because of you, she got help before losing everything. That's the person you always were. Someone who helped people. Who made things better. I'm sorry I ever made you doubt that about yourself. I don't ask for anything except this: please keep doing what you're doing. Let my mistakes mean something by helping others avoid the pain I caused you." Ryan, I read the letter twice, then set it down on my kitchen table. Martha, who'd been visiting when it arrived, watched me carefully. "How do you feel?" "I don't know," I said, honestly sad. Relieved. Vindicated, maybe. He's still making the same choices, still hurting people. But at least he finally sees it. "Are you going to write back?" I thought about it for a long moment. No. That door is still closed. But I'm glad he wrote. It gives me closure, I think. Confirmation that I made the right choice. Martha squeezed my hand. "You did. You absolutely did." That afternoon, I had a meeting scheduled with the Elder Justice Coalition. We were launching a new initiative, a mentorship program pairing elder abuse survivors with newly identified victims. I'd volunteered to be one of the first mentors. My first mentee was a 71-year-old woman named Susan. Her son had forged her signature on a reverse mortgage, leaving her at risk of losing her home. She was terrified, ashamed, and convinced she'd done something wrong by trusting him. We met at a coffee shop. Susan was small and frail, looking her eyes red from crying. "I don't know why I'm here," she said quietly. "I can't afford a lawyer. I can't fight my own son. I don't know what to do." "I know exactly how you feel," I said gently. 6 years ago I was sitting where you are. My nephew had stolen from me, and I thought I was too old, too alone, too powerless to fight back. But I was wrong, and you're wrong too. But over the next 2 hours, I walked her through the resources available. I introduced her to Patricia Vasquez, who agreed to take her case pro bono through the coalition's legal fund. I connected her with David Chen's firm for forensic analysis. Most importantly, I listened. I validated her pain. I assured her that what she was feeling, the betrayal, the shame, the anger, was normal and justified. "You're not alone anymore," I told her as we parted. "You have a whole community behind you now. We're gonna help you fight, and we're gonna win." Susan called me a week later, crying. Patricia filed an emergency injunction. The court stopped the foreclosure. "Beatrice, I can keep my house." I didn't think it was possible. "It's possible," I said smiling. "And it's just the beginning." Over the next year I mentored 5 more victims. Each one strengthened my resolve. Each victory reminded me why I'd chosen to go public with my story. On my 78th birthday, Martha threw me a surprise party. The guest list was unexpected: 3 of my mentees, several coalition board members, volunteers I'd worked with, and even Carol Jennings, the woman whose letter had inspired me to become an advocate. She'd moved back to Florida and had become a volunteer herself. "Speech," someone called out. I stood, glass of champagne in hand, looking at the faces around me. 6 years ago, I thought my life was ending. I'd been betrayed by family, my security was shattered, and I felt more alone than ever. Today I'm standing in a room full of people who've become my chosen family. People who fight for justice, who support survivors, who refuse to accept that elder abuse is just the way things are. I raise my glass to second chapters, to choosing yourself, to doors that close and windows that open, to all of us who refused to be victims and decided to be warriors instead. Here. The room cruised. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset over the Atlantic. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the waves rolling in with their eternal rhythm. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "Mrs. Thompson, my grandmother attended your talk last month. Because of you, she reported my uncle for financial abuse. The family is furious with her, but I wanted you to know you saved her life. Thank you for being brave enough to tell your story." I saved the message, adding it to a folder I kept of similar notes. There were dozens now, each one a reminder that my pain had purpose, that choosing to fight back had rippled outward in ways I couldn't have imagined. I thought about Ryan, sitting in a prison cell, hopefully learning lessons he should have learned decades ago. I thought about Leela, wherever she was, chasing her next opportunity. I thought about the version of myself who'd signed that power of attorney, trusting and naive. I didn't regret that version of me. She'd done the best she could with what she knew. But I was proud of the woman I'd become. Someone who'd faced betrayal and emerged stronger, someone who'd transformed trauma into advocacy, someone who'd refused to let age or circumstance define her limitations. The sun dipped below the horizon, the last rays of light fading to twilight. In the growing darkness, lights began to appear in windows up and down the coast. Hundreds of lives, hundreds of stories, hundreds of battles being fought in silence. But maybe, because of survivors like me who chose to speak up, a few more of those battles would be fought in the light. A few more victims would find the courage to protect themselves. A few more families would learn that blood relation doesn't grant license to abuse. My phone buzzed again. "Martha, happy birthday, mi amor. Proud of you every single day. Coffee tomorrow." "Me, absolutely. I'm thinking about planning another trip, maybe South America this time." "Martha, you're incorrigible." "I love it." I smiled, setting down my phone. At 78, I was planning international adventures, mentoring abuse survivors, serving on nonprofit boards, and living a life richer than any I'd imagined at 73. Ryan had tried to steal my future. Instead, he'd inadvertently given me a purpose I'd never known I needed. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stood stretching and walked back inside my condo. On my refrigerator, held by a magnet, was a quote I'd written after returning from Europe. "The most powerful thing a woman can say is, I will not be diminished. I will not be silenced. I will not disappear quietly into the margins of someone else's story. This is my life, and I will live it on my terms until my very last breath." Below it, I'd added one more line in my own handwriting. "And if someone tries to take that from me, I will fight like hell." I turned off the lights and headed to bed, already thinking about tomorrow's coffee with Martha, next week's mentoring session, next month's advocacy training, next year's travel plans. My vault had been emptied once, but I'd filled it again. Not just with money, but with purpose, with community, with the fierce joy that comes from surviving the unsurvivable and choosing to thrive anyway. This was my story, my real story. Not the tragedy Ryan tried to write, but the triumph I chose to create. And it was far, far from over.